Hey followers, you're watching Shastas Journey, and my name is Shasta Garcia, and I'm the host. This show is all about my path to purpose, and along the way, I get to meet so many incredible people with stories that can teach, heal, or inspire one of you. And on this episode, I will be interviewing a man who's had many impacts within my life and within my walk with God. He is a local publisher of a new magazine in the Rancho Murrieta area, and I'm really excited to talk with him about his faith and just how God has used his trials and tribulations to not only impact his life, but also the lives within his life. And I just want to thank you so much for being on the show, Robert, and just continuing to be a support in my life and on my walk with God.
Good.
Yeah, we met a few years ago, correct? Probably around then, through TSBN in Amador County. And I actually got to host a show with his son, Andrew Mees. And so we got to coordinate and get to know each other throughout that as well. And so as of right now, you are a publisher at a local magazine?
Yeah, my day job, basically, my wife and I own the Rancho Murrieta Neighbors magazine, and we publish their community magazine for that community group. The goal of the magazine was basically to bring the community together because they really, even though they were kind of an island into themselves, a small community of 6,100 people, they had no really connectivity, no stickiness as far as reaching them was concerned. And I had been working with some churches who had been looking at that community originally and not knowing how to actually reach that community at all because there were very few vehicles to communicate with them. And so I, as a businessman, I also saw it as an opportunity to have a magazine that produced a profit that could advertise other products, obviously, and services to that community beyond the faith issues. And it has worked out really well for me.
Definitely, and we actually have the newest issue of the magazine.
Our Christmas issue, yeah.
The Christmas issue. We figured it would be best to show you guys, the season, the reason for the season, I'm sure. So do you have reporters, or do you... We interview a family from the community and talk to them about their lives and what they do and all those kinds of things and publish information about them as a family. Oh, wow.
Then a lot of the community members will submit articles to us, photographs to us and about what's going on in the community. I write what's called a day tripper article, which is a way to take that community out of Rancho Murrieta and bring them into Amador and Calaveras counties for day tourism opportunities, whether it's to attend a theater or to attend an event or whatever it is. And so, a lot of community groups who have fundraisers, for example, they'll put a poster in the magazine to promote their what's going on there for a wine tasting event or whatever they've got happening. And so that brings stickiness between Rancho Murrieta and the two adjoining counties here.
It seems like the term community means a lot to you because I'm hearing you use it a lot. What does that mean to you?
Basically community is the connectivity and the stickiness between people who share a common place, common goals, common just bases of life, whether it's entertainment, whether it's social issues like, kids soccer or, drama or whatever you're involved with. And then, church life as well is a community. You have a community of believers, and then that sits in a community that's much larger than them. And I'm constantly looking for vehicles to help the church community reach out and become part of and more sticky with the community where they reside.
And within your community, you're not just a publisher for a magazine, but you also have a lot of roles within your local churches as well.
Correct. Yeah, I basically have spent, it's been 12 years now, working with our church and the Southern Baptist Convention in California with basically a healthy church program to help churches become more evangelical within their own communities where the churches sit. And this kind of came out of an experience that I personally had. I was brought up in a church. I had a long history in churches as a child. Church took the back seat in my life when I got to college, when I got was newly married and out there in the community working. And I became a business executive. I was traveling all over the world for a consulting company as their head of marketing. So I learned a lot of great marketing skills, and I learned a lot of communication skills and publishing skills and all these things. And so I was working for this company 12, 13 years ago, and pretty much every Monday morning I would get on a plane and I would fly someplace else out of the Sacramento airport to go someplace in the country to be at one of their offices to work with that office to have them become more impactful for the company as far as reaching new clientele or expanding the scope of the work we were doing with existing clients. And it was a great job. I was well treated. I was well paid for what I did. But God and religion and all of that was kind of the furthest from my mind. I had my family, I had my income, and that was kind of what was important.
Well, I like that you mentioned that, because sometimes all what individuals see is what's on the outside. Seeing this individual who has it all together, and it's important to show everything that you've been through to get to where you are now, and what has made you the man who you are today. And a part of that is your childhood. And taking it back, you said that you actually grew up in a Christian family. And how do you think that played a role within just the years growing up and going into your college years?
Well, I guess I don't know any part of my life without being in church. We were in church as a family, both on the East Coast before I moved to California, and then after we came here. And it really, I was involved in church youth activities and church camps and going to church every Sunday. And my family, my father and mother, were both very active in the church. My mother with the youth, my father in more administrative kinds of things. So, it was just always part of the life. Every Sunday you spent in church, and maybe a couple other times you ended up at church at one one church function or another that you were ending up being involved in. And I went to communion in the church and all of that. But by the time I got out of high school, I was involved in Young Life and other church-related, parachurch-related activities through the high school. I went to a Catholic university. I went to the University of Santa Clara, but pretty much at that point in time, I just stopped going to church. My life got too busy. I was as a student. I was a waiter, and so I was working most weekends, including Sundays, and the thought of even going to church was not even on my mind.
Do you think that becomes something that's kind of normal within our society nowadays, as far as, once life is kind of like smooth, everything's going great, you're on an uphill of a roller coaster, everything's great, you're happy. But then do you think that's when people start drawing away from God? Do you think that's something that...
Well, I think there's two sides to that. I think that we have a smaller percentage of the total population in America are going to church at all. So they don't even have the background that my generation had, where the majority of people were in a church or synagogue every Sunday morning or Saturday, and it was rare to find people who were totally faithless. And now we're finding the opposite is true, where you've got, the dominant culture is faithless, and the people of faith are considered to be oddballs as opposed to the norm. And so we're fighting against an entirely different enemy, or the same enemy but a different battle, I suppose, in trying to reach people for Christ in America now. And as far as I'm concerned, my faith as a young person sustained me through college and through my early work years and having a family. And we briefly went back to church when my two older children were in Sunday school age, so that they could have some foundation, but we weren't involved that much other than ringing bells in the bell choir kind of thing. And then when they got older and weren't in elementary school anymore, we kind of weaned away from church again. And it wasn't until really Andrew was ready for Vacation Bible School when he was 3 or 4 years old that Nancy started saying, well, we ought to really, start taking Andrew to at least Vacation Bible School in the summer, even if we don't go to a church. He said, get some kind of Christian Foundation. And so I said, fine. So she found Sierra Baptist Church, where we attend now, because we lived up in the Sierras, and started taking him there. And for about 3 years, she took Andrew to the Vacation Bible School at Sierra Baptist Church, and we would go to he'd go all week, and then on Friday nights I'd go to the Friday evening program and attend and watch what was going on. And this is where my life kind of took a big turn. In that third year, I was working out of the town that week. I arrive at the airport on Monday morning of Vacation Bible School week. My wife is taking Andrew every day, and I'm planning on coming home on Friday and flying home in time to get back to see the Friday evening program. Well, walking across the street from the car parking shuttle drops you off, and walking across, and I entered that building, I cannot tell you how many times. And I look up, and for the first time, I see the big sign above the building that says terminal. And I stopped in the middle of the street because it struck me in a totally different way. It said, isn't that something you die from? And I was scared to death. I was literally, I could not think, I could not speak. I walk into the building, I go up to the first class desk, and the women all know me by name. Oh, Mr. Mees, where are you going today? And which is also not a good sign when the people in the airport know you personally. You've been flying too many times, if that's the case. And I said, I have no idea where I'm going. Just print out my tickets and get me on a plane. So I flew to Houston and had an eventful week of work, and I'm flying home Friday afternoon so I could get back in time for the VBS program. And they taxi the plane out onto the runway, and they say, oh, we're having a mechanical difficulty. We're just going to pull the plane off to the side, let some other planes pass while we fix the problem. And I said, well, this is it. This is that terminal room. It's all about. I'm going to die here, leaving the airport here in Houston. And they said, but don't get out of your seats. So I had left my briefcase and stuff up in the seats, and so I'm rifling through the pocket in front of me to find the Mainliner magazine or something to read while I'm waiting. And I found a tattered copy of Purpose Driven Life sitting in the pocket of the seat in the plane. So I pull it out of the pocket, and I spend the time between, if the plane takes off, everything's fine. Between the time the plane takes off and the time that I arrive back in Sacramento, I devoured the whole book. That night, I drive home. I get there just in time to come to the Friday evening program at the church, and I'm in tears the entire time. I mean, just my tears are running down my face, and I'm totally, beside myself. And I'd been through those children's programs a couple times in a row now, right, and they didn't impact me at all. Well, this is making a big difference. This is a bunch of kids on stage, singing VBS songs. And I'm just pouring, kind of crying. And I felt like I had a heart transplant right there and then, just right in the middle of that little church. So that really was a turning point. And I went and visited with the pastor. Well, Saturday at dinner, of course, Andrew announces, we should start going to church there.
He planted a little seed.
Oh, yeah, so what do you do, right? So we start going to church, and then I met the pastor, and I said, we've got to talk. And so I wanted to talk through kind of all this stuff. Because last thing I wanted to do is, one, become a Baptist, and two, start going to church on a regular basis.
So you were Catholic before?
No, I was a Methodist.
Methodist, okay.
But I went to a Catholic university.
Gotcha, all right.
Which is a very more open-minded as far as Catholics are concerned. I think the Jesuits are very liberal on the
interesting
Catholic spectrum of things. So they're intellectuals. Mm-hmm. They're the professors of the Catholic world. I mean, so they have a different mindset completely. Interesting group of men, though. Very faithful, but their mission is to teach. Mm-hmm. But an interesting group of men make up the Jesuits. But yeah, so I mean, here I am talking to this Baptist pastor about why I don't want to ever become a Baptist and don't ever want to really get involved in the church. But I'm having this experience and I don't know what to do about it. It wasn't long before I literally called my boss and I went cold turkey from my job.
Wow.
quit my job with no job prospects, of course, in the Sierra Nevadas for the kind of work I was doing.
Would you call that a leap of faith at that time?
Absolutely a leap of faith at that time. I mean, I knew I couldn't be doing what I was doing and do whatever I was supposed to be doing, which I wasn't certain what that was.
What were the effects of taking that leap of faith?
Oh, my wife thought I'd lost my mind. We did talk about it before I did it, but I mean, she saw me giving up the financial security of an extremely good job with all kinds of perks that just are, unfathomable. And not knowing what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. So I started working with local businesses throughout the Sierras. I kind of drew a circle around my house. I said, okay, my personal life is going to be within this confine. So I kind of drew, where can I drive in a day and get home at night every night? And that's going to be where I work.
Because you used to stay out of town pretty much all
I was
week,
pretty much gone
all
3 of 4 weeks a month.
Wow.
And so there was a toll my family paid for that, and as well as me personally. I mean, I spent a Father's Day in a hotel in London by myself. I spent my wife's birthday in New York once, in London another time. I mean, so these are not happy things. So
yeah, and how do you think, because of the experiences you've been through now, how do you stop yourself from becoming the type of person that you used to be, as far as when everything starts going right, you kind of just like, oh, blah, blah, and then you put faith on the back burner? How have you been able to suppress that and really put faith at the center of your heart?
I think the easier answer to that question is that I've made my vocation God's work, and my occupation are things that I just do to support my family, if that makes sense.
No, it does.
I didn't intend it that way, but that's kind of what happened. I mean, basically, the more I got involved in realizing how valuable my talents were to the kingdom, how I could use my marketing skills, my public relations skills, my advertising skills, my public speaking skills for God's work, then I could put that first and center and put my faith in God that He would otherwise support me using those talents in secular means. And that's exactly what happened. At first, my personal desire was to not be a tent maker, was to basically have a faith-based vocation that paid the bills. And I thought that was possible. And God shut the door on those things so many times, I can't tell you. I made attempts, but without financial success enough to support the family. So I basically said, well, okay, what is God really telling me to do? He still wants me to do all this other stuff that doesn't pay anything. So how am I going to support the family the rest of the time? And so I looked at the talents the same way. I said, well, who can I help most with those talents for profit while I'm also using those for God's work? And so I started working with small businesses throughout Northern California with their business development, with their marketing, with their advertising, what they needed to reach the businesses. And I would do the same thing for churches. I basically went through an entire regimen of education on evangelism and healthy church movement and all of those kinds of things, working with churches to use those same skill sets. How can they be more impactful in their communities where they sit? How can they reach more people for the kingdom right in their backyard? Churches were really wonderful about sending missionaries to other places, but not walking their own communities. Or having events that they opened the church up to the whole community that weren't necessarily religious or, churchy. And so it just, I started doing consulting work for churches, helping them identify what their, for lack of a better word, market is.
That must have been very impactful.
And it's been a blast. I've had so much fun doing it because churches hate to think of themselves as needing a marketing engine. And the reality is, if they're not, all evangelism is marketing. I mean, basically you are
marketing Jesus.
You know, you got to tell people you're there, and you got to tell people what the benefit of your product is, and you've got to tell people how to reach you and how to come to you, and that you've got to be approachable. All the things that marketing is all about.
That's a really fascinating way to look at discipling.
Well, I mean, discipling is a whole other story.
Well.
Discipling is the training after the fact, but the actual getting the people to cross the threshold, to become part of your family, to become part of your community, getting back to where we started with this, is the hard part. And so for our church, for example, when I started there and Andrew started going to Vacation Bible School, the weekend prior to Vacation Bible School, they would have a carnival in the church parking lot for the kids to try to encourage kids to sign up for Vacation Bible School. So I said, well, you know, how successful has that been in reaching other kids in the community outside the church? And it pretty much wasn't. Basically, it was serving the saved, serving the children of the saved, or at least all the church family and the grandchildren of members of the church would all come to the church carnival in the church parking lot. Beyond that, it had no impact. So I said, well, why don't we change that? Why don't we move the carnival to the public park and invite the entire community to come to the carnival? And not even mention that Vacation Bible School has anything to do with it. Just to say, and we'll do it on the 4th of July, and we'll move Vacation Bible School to the week after the 4th of July. It was kind of rough to get old habits changed, but they agreed to do it, at least for the first year, to see if, well, we had 500 people show up for the carnival. We normally had 35 kids in Vacation Bible School. We had 75 that first year. We have over 100 now.
And I've been to that event,
yes,
correct?
You went to the carnival.
Yes.
You've been to the carnival.
I'm pretty sure we're talking about the same thing.
You and Andrew basically came and did your Teens on the Scene interview at the carnival for TSPN one year.
That show doesn't happen anymore, but you guys should totally check out that episode because it's kind of hilarious. Actually, the ending of the episode, I totally dunk Andrew in a dunk tank. It's pretty fabulous. And I didn't actually throw the ball and hit the target. I just went up and just boop.
Yeah, she was not nice.
Hey, it was a lot of competition between us, okay? Like the one time where he beat me up the rock climbing wall, that was the one thing that I just was not good at. But yes, if you guys want to check out kind of what the event is and what he's talking about, definitely check that out.
Yeah, the old Teens in the Scene episode are still out on the World Wide Web there on YouTube somewhere.
Yeah, me and Andrew, I felt like we had a lot of chemistry throughout these episodes, and it's crazy because we met literally 10 minutes before we started recording our very first episode at this event.
Right.
And just watching it, it looks like we knew each other forever. It really does.
Good. Both professionals. What can I say?
Well, I'm thankful that I got to meet him through you, and I got to meet you through Heather Murdoch and so forth. And that's how, our lives are so intertwined with different people, and I think that's what really makes community.
Yeah, true.
Right?
The stickiness comes from all of that.
Well, that is definitely right. How has your faith transformed you into the person you are, and how God is using you today?
Well,
I know there's a lot.
I know. I mean, basically, like I said, I think I look at everything I do through a different lens. How are my actions going to impact my ministry? Because we all have one. You got to think of your life as a ministry. So what you do and what you say and the jokes you tell and the way you dress and the way you treat other people, all those things are a reflection of you and your walk in life. And the things I have second thoughts about saying things the way I used to say them, or telling jokes that I used to tell, or that just because I want to be the best ambassador I can for the kingdom. That doesn't mean I'm a wet noodle, because I still tell off-color jokes and do other things, but I temper that and much more than I used to, because I want to be the right face. And I have a friend that I also knew through TSPN, who was one of the interviewers on that station. And, I was always, he was always fearful of offending me because I was, I was God's representative in the room. Even though he personally isn't a person of faith. But he would treat me differently when I was in the room than he would have treated me otherwise. And so that was a good thing. I mean, and there's been lots of occasions where that's come up, where, it's like, so I had a client who at one point in time refused to do business with me because of some of the faith-based things I had on my Facebook page. She says, that's really contrary to my beliefs and blah, 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 and, I'm really not comfortable doing business with you anymore. So she stopped being a client. A couple years later, I get a telephone call from her. And she had a death in the family, and she wanted to know if it was okay if she came to church with me on Sunday. So, even though at one time that was not the right thing for her, she knew she could come to me with this issue and talk about it and want to be part of a Christian community as a consequence of that event in her life. So that's why you have to be mindful, I think. So I guess the change is that I am conscious of my role. And I think about it all the time. And sometimes I backpedal, as word you use, where I say things I wish I had not said, or
I think we all do that.
And but at least I have guilt about it.
Yes.
But it does it kind of sharpens me to be thinking in those terms and what I'm doing, and that my real purpose in life is not to make money; it's to take care of my family. I mean, these are all things that it's all biblically sound. Take care of my family, take care of my church, be honorable to God, and try to impact as many other people with the time that I have left in life to bring them to the kingdom, and help other people do the same thing. And I'm kind of a training mechanism in that, because I help churches then with their own ability to get out of the box.
Well, I think this is going to be a very powerful episode. I think that people are going to get a lot out of it, and you're going to teach, heal, or inspire others. And I just want to thank you for being on the show and taking time out of your busy life to, be a part of my journey. And just thank you so much for everything that you do. If you guys want to feel community or get some tips on how to make your church more impactful, please contact Robert. And then also visit shastasjourney.com and our Facebook page, Shastas Journey. Remember that there's a newness in life with God, and that you have the power to impact others through your stories, and I'd love to hear them. And just know that you're a reflection of God's work. And I hope you guys have a blessed day and a Merry Christmas.